Imagine this. It's October 25th, 1415. You're one of just 6,000 English soldiers, exhausted, hungry, and trapped deep in enemy territory. Blocking your path home is a colossal French army, perhaps 30,000 strong, gleaming in their heavy plate armor, confident of an easy victory. The odds aren't just bad, they're impossible. This was the scene on the morning of the Battle of Agincourt, one of the most legendary and improbable victories in military history. How did this band of brothers, led by the young King Henry V, manage to defy a force 5 times its size? The answer lies in a combination of brilliant tactics, revolutionary technology, and a little bit of mud. The English army was in a desperate situation. After a long and grueling campaign in France, they were trying to march to the safety of Calais, an English-held port. But the French, determined to crush the invaders once and for all, had cut them off. The chosen battlefield was a narrow stretch of freshly plowed farmland, hemmed in on both sides by dense woods. For the French, this seemed like the perfect place to trap and annihilate the English. For King Henry, it was a godsend. He understood that this terrain, this narrow funnel, was his greatest ally. It would prevent the massive French army from using its superior numbers to surround his small force. The key to Henry's plan was the English longbow. This wasn't just a bow, it was the superweapon of the Middle Ages. Standing 6 feet tall, it required immense strength to draw, but in the hands of a skilled archer, it could fire up to 12 arrows a minute over incredible distances. These arrows, tipped with sharpened steel points called bodkins, could punch through even the thickest plate armor. Henry positioned his men-at-arms in the center, a solid block of steel, but his real strength was on the flanks. He placed his thousands of longbowmen along the edges of the woods, protected by a line of sharpened stakes driven into the ground. A simple but ingenious defense against charging cavalry. As the morning mist began to clear, the French, resplendent on their war horses, grew impatient. Their knights and nobles, eager for glory and ransom, jostled for a position at the front. This arrogance would be their undoing. They launched their first charge, a thunderous wave of mounted knights, straight into the narrowest part of the field. And then, the sky went dark. A storm of arrows, tens of thousands of them, rained down from the English lines. The sound was said to be like a hailstorm on a slate roof. Horses screamed and fell, throwing their heavily armored riders into the thick, clinging mud. The French cavalry charge dissolved into a chaotic, struggling mass of men and animals, completely breaking its own momentum before it even reached the English lines. Seeing the cavalry falter, the main body of the French army, their knights and men-at-arms on foot, began their slow advance. But remember that terrain? The battlefield, already churned up by the horses, had become a quagmire. Each step was a struggle for the French knights, weighed down by 50 to 100 pounds of steel plate. As they trudged forward, exhausted and sinking into the mud, they were relentlessly peppered by the English longbowmen. The arrows found gaps in their armor, pierced visors, and brought down man after man. Those who did manage to reach the English line were exhausted and disorganized. They crashed into the steady English men-at-arms who, being more lightly armored, could move more freely on the treacherous ground. What followed was not a noble clash of swords, but a brutal, close-quarters struggle. The battlefield became a tangled heap of bodies. French knights who fell in the mud were often unable to get back up, and many suffocated or were trampled by their own comrades pressing from behind. The English archers, having spent their arrows, dropped their bows, drew their swords, daggers, and hatchets, and swarmed from the flanks into the struggling French ranks. Being unarmored, they were nimble and deadly, finishing off the trapped and exhausted knights. The French army, so confident just hours before, completely collapsed. The narrow field that was meant to be a trap for the English had become a death trap for the French, with their own numbers working against them, creating a fatal crush. The scale of the French defeat was staggering. While English losses were in the hundreds, the French lost thousands, including a huge portion of their nobility. Dukes, counts, and high-ranking commanders lay dead on the field. It was a catastrophic blow to the French leadership and morale, and it completely shifted the momentum of the 100 Years' War. For England, the victory was a shot of pure adrenaline. It cemented King Henry V's status as a legendary warrior king and created a powerful sense of national pride and identity that has echoed through the centuries. The legacy of Agincourt is immense. It was immortalized by William Shakespeare in his play, Henry V, with the famous St. Crispin's Day speech becoming a timeless call to courage against overwhelming odds. The battle demonstrated that a well-led, disciplined army with superior technology and tactics could defeat a much larger, but more poorly organized force. It marked the beginning of the end for the age of the heavily armored knight, and heralded the dominance of missile infantry on the European battlefield. The story of Agincourt is more than just a historical event. It's a powerful tale of how courage, ingenuity, and a refusal to surrender can turn certain defeat into a glorious victory. It reminds us that sometimes, the biggest army doesn't win the day. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to 1415. If you enjoyed this story of incredible defiance, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most epic moments. Let me know in the comments what other battles you'd like to see covered. Until next time, stay curious.